Hi, right, so first lesson in the teacher support pack for stress for IB Health Psychology. We're looking at what is stress. This is just one introductory lesson just to introduce students to the idea of stress and understanding how do we define it and why is it difficult to define and measure. That question is really designed to get students to understand the TRIA social stress test and the perceived stress scale. It's really valuable for them to know these two things before we get into the unit. We begin with the key terms traffic lights, which are here in the workbook, and then a brain dump, which is simply when have they felt stressed. The idea is they share ideas, and then that might help them figure out a definition. Okay, what do all these things have in common? And just brings their existing knowledge to the surface. You can share some of these interesting facts about the Stressed in America survey, and you can do some stress tests. Now, this would be very valuable to establish early in the unit for yourself as a teacher how are you going to measure stress, because if you want to replicate some of the studies later in the unit, then it's good to have these stress tests ready to go. Okay, so the TRIA social stress test is, they do, it's a public speaking task, and it's explained in a moment, but you want a before and after measure. And anytime you're doing these studies, it's helpful. So if you can get a blood pressure machine, if you have one of those, that'd be fantastic. Heart rate is really simple, basic. You can use the online questionnaire, the perceived stress scale, or there's basic online tests like this one. I would say ideally you want to do the blood pressure. I think that'd be most ideal, but it's probably the hardest if it requires the machine. When I looked on Amazon just now, they actually I think completely sold out, but they're about $100, I think, if your school has a budget, or your nurse's station at school might have one. Okay, so we're trying to understand what is stress, and then if you can replicate the TRIA social stress test. All right, now all the instructions for this are in the activities file, and there's also videos here. So if you're not comfortable with what this test is, then maybe just watch these videos, or if you don't have the time to do it in class, you can watch the videos and you can see it. But if you do want to replicate it, I'd replicate it first before you watch the videos, because it's more interesting for students. Now, you'll see this slide appearing a lot. What this slide is for me, and also for you as a placeholder as a teacher, you can either choose which one of these you do for the students to access the information in the book. Okay, so if I, sorry, let me go back. Hang on, file, open recent. So you can give students the choice if they, I'm sorry, I should have had this ready to go. If they can watch a video, so I'm making video tutorials for every lesson, not these are for students based on the content. Okay, they can read this. This is the information in the textbook, which is everything about the TRIA social stress test or the perceived stress scale. So the textbook has all the information. They can listen to the audiobook. Okay, if you have the bundle, the audiobook is just me reading this information as well. I'm going to make videos that summarizes this information, and then you can lecture with the slides here. So two ways you could do this is and you might want to mix it up, but I would sometimes maybe give the students a choice. Okay, if you want to listen to me, if you want to read, go to the back of the class. If you want to listen, put in the audiobook, or you can just mix it up yourself. Okay, today I'm going to lecture, tomorrow you're going to watch it. You can get them to read it at home ahead of time. It's just designed to give you more choices, and also to give the students more choices if you want to as well. Okay, so here's just the chalk and talk slides you can explain, and then we're defining stress. Okay, and then explaining why is it difficult to define and measure. Now, this is kind of, you can go over this about the stress response. It's kind of valuable to know later on. The latest version of the book has some additional text here about acute and chronic stress. Anyway, but that's it. So the key really for this lesson is to learn about what is stress, how do we define it, and the definition is in the slides, when the demands exceed our resources, essentially. And the TRIA social stress test, what is that? How do they do it? And the perceived stress scale, because so many studies use those two things in them. Okay, now that is just the end of that simple introductory lesson, and then we get into the cognitive explanations next.